Good afternoon. Welcome to this week's edition of the Webster Tarpley program here on Unbound Radio. It is the afternoon of Tuesday, the 25th of June, 2013, and a good occasion to sum up where we are in the overriding issue of war and peace. As I have been stressing for the past several weeks, the main issue of the historical moment we're in, and it can be a decisive one, is not programs started under the Bush administration for domestic spying. We've been living under those programs now for the best part of a decade, and somehow we seem to have survived. Those programs are not new. The PRISM is not new. The warrantless wiretapping or warranted wiretapping is not new. All the variations on those themes are not new. But they have a kind of a prurient appeal, I guess, in some quarters. But the main issue right now, which will decide the future for civil liberties and everything else, is war and peace. And the bottom line is, start a war with Syria, and you can forget everything you want. You'll lose your civil liberties, you'll lose your economic rights, you'll lose your standard of living. That will become a general war in the Middle East. It's already headed that way. That will be the United States at war with Hezbollah, Syria, Iraq, Iran. Maybe Pakistan will join in under certain circumstances, with Russia behind them and China perhaps a little bit further behind. A catastrophe. And there is no hope for civil liberties under those conditions. It simply cannot be done. So this is the reality, and people have to understand it. Now, along comes the snow job, the Snowden snow job. This tired, threadbare, transparent, and I think poorly executed CIA limited hangout operation designed to distract people, to fool them, to essentially neutralize people, to turn them into useful idiots, to turn them into allies of the warmongers, and weakening the U.S. government of Obama to the point where this can be carried out. And unfortunately, people have learned almost nothing. They've learned nothing from Ellsberg, nothing from Assange. Ellsberg, of course, gave you Watergate and the destruction or partial destruction of the office of the presidency. Assange, even more recently, with his cognitive infiltration, helped to destroy all the progressive movements, opened the way for Obama, neutralized the domestic challenges to the Bush programs, right? If you wanted to get rid of the wiretapping and so forth, the way to do that would have been to impeach Bush Cheney. That would have made some sense, and there you had some arithmetic that might have done it. But thanks to a number of factors, and Assange is certainly one of them, it didn't happen. And then we got the Arab Spring, and that's what has gotten us now to the brink of another big war. So we're going to give you a strategic rundown on all this in this week's edition on Unbound Radio, Webster Tarpley program. Back in a minute. Welcome back to the Webster Tarpley program, and what we want to do is to give you a rundown of who is actually pushing for war. In any situation like this, you want to know who's the enemy, who should you be attacking, who do you want to counter in all of this? And the most, I think, the most ignorant, the most obviously wrong assumption is that that's Obama, right? But unfortunately, we got a lot of libertarians, so-called, a lot of Austrian crackpots who are obsessed with their hatred of Obama in the same way that they were obsessed with their hatred for Clinton. Some of them were obsessed with their hatred for Bush. Now they're obsessed with their hatred for Obama. One of the teachings of Christianity, which I think is of great public utility is that hating is not good. You shouldn't do it. But blinded by hate, many people are, and now they're increasingly joined by left liberals, the former dupes of Obama, the ones I tried to warn with not one but two books in the pre-election phase of 2008. Don't put Obama in, or things will get worse. And now things have gotten worse. They've gotten so bad that Obama is no longer the greater evil. Obama is now a lesser evil in his crude instinct for self-preservation, his reluctance, his vacillation, his desire to lead from behind and to execute the divine plan of buck passing, D-E-V-I-N-E, a CIA official, right? It's based on cyber war, economic sanctions, drones, assassinations, special forces, occasional bombing, but nothing big. Not the big bombing campaign, and certainly not the heavy land invasion, which is ultimately the goal of many of these people who are pushing for war with Syria. So we've just had an attempted coup d'etat on the 13th of June, Thursday. It's about, 10 days ago now. And that coup d'etat was aiming at an immediate initiation of the bombing of Syria. And we have left liberals and libertarians who seem to know this, some of them do, and they say, oh, that's not important. I don't care about a coup d'etat. I don't care about bombing Syria. I don't care about a regional war in the Middle East. I don't even care about a world war. I'm concerned that somebody's reading my stupid email and listening to my stupid, empty, insignificant phone calls. That's what it comes down to. Now, of course, we're not in favor of wiretapping, but there's got to be some sense of proportion in the world. And again, whatever you think you're going to fight for directly against wiretapping, if an outside event like the Syrian war takes place, you can forget whatever it is you thought you were trying to assure yourself, right? It's all going to go by the boards. The way that the police state arrives is that it ratchets up during war emergencies. So therefore, if you've learned anything, it is once the war has started, you can forget your civil liberties. It's time to stop the war before the fact. In 2002, that would have been attack the 9/11 story, discredit it, cut Bush off at the knees. And that would have been the same in the autumn of 2001. And some of us were trying to do that. But now it's slightly different. It's don't fall for the snow job. Don't rally to Assange and Snowden. These are people who have nothing to say against war. Assange is not anti-war. Assange is on record saying that he doesn't care about war one way or the other, but he wants everything to be transparent. He's anti-secrecy, pro-transparency, and war or no war is indifferent to him. And with Snowden, we don't hear Snowden telling us anything about how Libya was destroyed or the schemes of Ben Rhodes and others against Syria, things that would be absolutely timely and would convince, at least go some ways towards convincing us of his good faith, at least on those particular revelations. He's got nothing on it, and of course nothing on 9/11. So let's go back to Thursday. I'm sorry, or was it Wednesday? Let's see. Wednesday, the 13th of June, and we're at a meeting of the Principals Committee. Now, when the U.S. government is being run by the Principals Committee, there you know it's a crisis. The last time we had a prolonged period of rule by the Principals Committee was back in the spring of 1999, when Clinton had to hock and mortgage his entire presidency in order to stay in office for another year and then limp home. In those days, it was the Principals Committee. It essentially means either the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, the National Security Director, the Attorney General, but it often means their deputies. So in this case, it looks like it's the higher level one. So in comes Mr. Skull and Bones. Skull and Bones has a track record Stimson is partly responsible for World War II. He's partly responsible for Pearl Harbor. He is certainly responsible for putting the Japanese in the concentration camp. Stimson is responsible for the decision to bomb Hiroshima with an atomic bomb and Nagasaki. Then a little bit later, we've got the Vietnam War, Averell Harriman, McGeorge Bundy, and his brother, cousin William Bundy. They're big on the getting the Vietnam War going. And then, of course, we've got Bush the Elder starts the first Gulf War. Bush the Younger starts the second Iraq War. What's the common denominator? They're all from Skull and Bones, so much so that when Kerry came in, I put out an essay. You can read it at tarpley.net on precisely this very, very sensitive issue, right? If you put Skull and Bones into the government, you're liable to get a war. Obviously, very bad for Obama to do this, but, blackmail and other stuff, who knows what goes on behind the scenes. Obama was coming out of an attempted coup d'etat last September, October, November, December, which most of our libertarian and left liberal heroes are still incapable of having understood. They haven't identified it yet. Maybe in another decade or two. All right, so at the Principals Committee meeting, and we're quoting here from an article in Bloomberg News. It's by Jeffrey Goldberg. Now, Jeffrey Goldberg is generally a pro-Israeli writer. I think he's usually associated with the Atlantic Monthly, if I'm not mistaken. But this Goldberg is pro-Israeli, so I think he is not happy with this outcome. He would have wanted something else. He's putting it out perhaps to get more momentum so that Kerry can try this the second time. And here's the heart of the matter. At a principals meeting in the White House Situation Room, Secretary of State John Kerry began arguing vociferously for immediate U.S. airstrikes against airfields under the control of Bashar al-Assad, specifically those fields, bases that the Syrian government has used, allegedly now, we're already in the realm of myth, to launch chemical weapons raids against rebel forces. So, what happens? The chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Dempsey, speaks up. Now, who is Dempsey? Dempsey is Obama's guy. Obama needed a general to promote and make great, and the main qualification would be, you're not Petraeus, you're not McChrystal, you're not part of the Petraeus coup clique, the putschists, the people who are interested in some kind of an overthrow of the government and Bonapartist or semi-dictatorial rule. So this is Dempsey. He is the anti-Obama. He's Obama's guy in the same sense that Hagel and Clapper are Obama's guys, whatever their merit. And their merit is not great. But here, Dempsey does a service to all of us. The usually mild-mannered Army General Martin Dempsey spoke up loudly. According to several sources, more than one, Dempsey threw a series of brushback pitches at Kerry, demanding to know just exactly what the post-strike plan would be, and pointing out that the State Department did not fully grasp the complexity of such an operation. Dempsey reminded Kerry that the Air Force could not simply drop a few bombs, fire a few cruise missiles at the targets inside Syria. In order to be safe and to carry out the operation, the U.S. would have to neutralize Syria's integrated air defense system, an operation that would require 700 or more sorties. Put the accent on more. And how many planes lost? We'll be interested to see. At a time when the U.S. military is exhausted and when sequestration is ripping into the Pentagon budget, Dempsey is said to have argued that a demand by the State Department for precipitous military action in a murky civil war was not welcome. Well, good. Those are cogent and relevant points. So Dempsey, at least, is certainly the lesser evil here. And as this article goes on, the officials who were in the meeting say that Kerry fought back, but the State Department has no entrance strategy, no exit strategy, and no estimate of the consequences. So, as a result of this meeting, though, Kerry, by pushing forward with this lunatic proposal, was able to extort a concession And the concession was that Obama grudgingly, through the mouth of Ben Rhodes, decides to supply the more moderate elements. I'm quoting from the article now. The moderate cannibals, the moderate terrorists of the Free Syrian Army under General Idris, a madman, they get small arms and ammunition. And of course, everybody knows the U.S. has always been supplying small arms and ammunition through Incirlik Air Force Base in NATO base in Turkey, and that there were CIA logistics managers channeling these things to different people. We're also told that Tony Blinken, this is Biden's guy, Deputy National Security Advisor, says superpowers don't bluff. So that puts him rather close to Kerry, that once you've drawn a red line, boy, then you better start a war, or otherwise you have egg on your face. Well, better these public bums should have egg on their face than we get stuck in a new war, possibly leading to a world war, right? This game of the egos when you're talking about hecatombs of epic historical proportions is absolutely shocking. And to remind us, Obama goes on with Charlie Rose with an interview and says he is worried about sliding down the slippery slope towards greater intervention in Syria. All right. So that's what happened in the Principals Committee between the 12th and 13th of June of this past month. We came very close. Now, you may say, oh, no, he was just arguing a viewpoint, right? That's just vetting, right? That's what this article tries to tell us. It's just vetting. Well, go back to October 1973. While Nixon was sleeping, Henry Kissinger implemented a worldwide U.S. nuclear alert. Some say DEFCON 3, some say DEFCON 2, just short of war, to scare the Soviets, because the Soviets had said they were going to send a few divisions of Red Army peacekeepers into Egypt to prevent the Israelis from trying to steal more of Egypt and their oil and so forth. So that was while Nixon was asleep. The story was Kissinger called Haig, said, "Wake up, Nixon." Haig said no. Maybe that was prearranged. And then Kissinger said, well, in that case, I have to do it myself. And then, that's one. And then the other recent one that's quite well documented is in March of 1999, when Yevgeny Primakov, a Soviet or Russian prime minister already, was flying across the Atlantic with a peace solution for Bosnia, Serbia, Al Gore, without reference to Clinton, an end run, a coup, a putsch, said to Wesley Clark, who couldn't wait, Wesley Clark, go ahead and start the bombing. We're not going to wait for Primakov, who then had to turn back over the Atlantic. So that is what has just happened. An attempted coup d'etat by Skull and Bones Kerry, leading immediately to bombing. And what are you doing about it? Oh, you're cheerleading for snow. You're falling for the snow job. Isn't that precious? At this rate, the country is going to be lost within a few more months if this is the best we can do. Back in a minute on the Webster Tarpley program. Welcome back to the Webster Tarpley program. It's the afternoon of Tuesday, the 25th of June, 2013. We are in the midst of the 150th anniversary of the Gettysburg Campaign and of the Vicksburg Campaign. And where I am now in the D.C. area, this was crossed over by the rebel army as well as by the United States Army. Various cavalry thrusts were going on. So we're right in the middle of the decisive phase of the Civil War. And we are reminded with that Supreme Court decision today, if you disallow the historical pattern of racial discrimination in not only southern states, but this applies to a number of other places which are not in the South at all, the former Confederate states. Outside of the former Confederate states, what you're doing is allowing those people to do one trick after another. In other words, if you can't review it before it's implemented, they can send up one absurd scheme, use that for the election this year, By the time it's been struck down, they've got another one, and it just never ends. In other words, it's like Snyder in Michigan, right? He's got one emergency manager law. The people vote that one down, and before you turn around in 2 weeks, he's got another one, slightly different, so he can keep doing it, right? Even though the will of the people has been clear. And it shows how alive the issues of the Civil War are. I always have to laugh when people say, oh, the remedy for 1984 is 1776. Yes, but the remedy for 1984 is 1776 and 1865, the end of slavery and the breaking of that slavocrat, treasonous, pro-British, Southern imbecile oligarchy, which seems to attract the nostalgia of so many. Anyway, here we go. The 1 week after the fall of Qusair, when Qusair fell, I told you this was going to be a big deal. The fall of Qusair on Wednesday, the 5th of June, World Historical Turning Point. It means the death squads in Syria are on their way to getting mopped up, wiped out, annihilated, get it? Liquidated. And by Wednesday, June 12th, Skull and Bones Kerry is already trying to launch a bombing campaign to save those death squads from destruction. And in town that day, let's not forget, Perfide Albion, the British are in town. Foreign Secretary Haig, that guy, the bald guy who looks like Mr. Clean, who loves to hear the sound of his own voice. You know the one. So he's in town, and he's obviously pushing for the coup. So Kerry of Skull and Bones pulls his act together and tries to launch the coup. But it's blocked, I wouldn't really say by the Pentagon, although I hope there are people in the Pentagon who are opposed to Petraeus and to that clique and who really don't want another war at this point, right? You can break the United States military, break the U.S. Army, Navy, and Air Force if you insist on more of this adventurism. But the thing is stopped by Obama loyalists. That's the point. Now let's just take a look at some of the other people, the other forces that are trying to push Obama into something he doesn't want to do. And let's just pause. If you have to have Kerry try an end run, and if the end run, the coup, the putsch, through the Principals Committee on the Al Gore model or to some extent on the Kissinger model of 1973, if you have to do that, it means you do not have Obama in your pocket. Obama is not won over to the cause of a big war where his future is on the line. I agree. I don't think Obama cares about the United States. He cares about Obama. He cares about not being impeached. He cares about other things, right? Other unpleasant things that might follow impeachment, given the lunatic nature of the Republicans. So the fact that this incident has occurred is a crucial experiment. It shows that the thesis of those low information websites, those poorly informed characters, they think Obama's the main warmonger. He's clearly not. There are others who are much worse warmongers that deserve your attention. And back in a minute on the Webster Tarpley program. Welcome back to the Webster Tarpley program here on Unbound Radio. We're just going through the identities of the actual warmongers. Obama is not the main warmonger. Obama has very limited goals. They mainly have to do with the self-preservation of Obama, but there is very little appetite for another large-scale foreign adventure, just as the Iraq one has been ended, as the Afghan one is winding down amid obvious disarray, failure, chaos, and so forth. And he's even talked about repealing the authorization to use military force. And every time I say it, I got to remind you, I mean the post 9/11 authorization, the blank check for war and dictatorship that Ron Paul voted for. If you want courage, you find Barbara Lee, the black congresswoman from Texas. She voted against it. Ron Paul, no guts, a gutless wonder. He was for the war in Afghanistan before he was against it. So what does this leprechaun want from our lives. So we've just been going through the attempted coup d'etat by Kerry on the afternoon of Wednesday, the 12th of June, 1 week after the fall of Qusair. Kerry, presumably goaded by Haig, the British Foreign Secretary, tries to get the U.S. government to start bombing in the same way that Al Gore had done that in 1999. Now, in addition, this was the sort of U.S. level attempt. This had been, this was followed by an attempt to do the same thing at the G7 in Northern Ireland. Now, here, this is very well documented. This is a front page story in the London Times, and it says, David Cameron, the Prime Minister of Great Britain, at the G7, not the G8. He didn't ask Putin to join in. He didn't do that. He only circulated this to the NATO people, who are the G7 in effect, and the perhaps the Japanese, but certainly the NATO parts of the G7. Cameron had a plan to assassinate President Assad of Syria, a plan for murder, for an assassination of the head of state. I wonder if he's got any 00 operatives that can come around and do that. This used to be illegal. Under U.S. law, it would be illegal, I think, still, or at least under existing executive orders, to assassinate foreign heads of state. Right? Didn't we have enough of that in the excesses that were unveiled by the Church Committee, the Pike Committee, and so forth, right after Watergate? Anyway, Cameron says it's possible to use an asset who would be a top-level official of the Syrian security or military apparatus, attack and kill Assad, and then set up a puppet government, but not based on the death squad so much, because that, of course, means chaos. That means the emirate and a crazy quilt of many emirates, right? Probably a few dozen emirates. But they want to keep it together, at least according to this plan. It's a novel plan with the Ba'ath Party bureaucracy and keeping the Syrian army together so that you can then control the country for whatever you want to do with it. So that, very little feedback on what the responses were. But so here we have two attempts, one by Kerry, goaded by Haig, and another one by Cameron to start a war, right? A big war with the Russians scowling in the background and not happy. And I'm amazed, again, the libertarians and the left liberals converging in imbecility once more. They're concerned with Snowden. Oh, yeah, because Rand Paul says Snowden is a hero. Oh, of course, he's a great guy. You're going to see a lot of these, the right-wingers, right, the reactionary libertarians will back off as it's clear that Snowden is sashaying through China and Russia. But let's continue with our own argument here. We've heard from Kerry, we've heard from Cameron. They want war. They want an immediate attack on Syria. Obama doesn't. Here's another one. This is a real treacherous one. Clinton, Bill Clinton at the, I guess it's the Clinton Global Initiative, around the middle of the month, says, oh, Obama, if you just sit there and you don't do anything about Syria, you're going to be a wuss. You're going to be a total wuss. Now, that is a very low blow. Clinton knows it. This is one of the things that got Obama to the point of essentially enabling the arms shipments that have been going on and now are going on officially, I would say, but that's about it. Clinton is concerned with the future of Clinton, but also of Hillary Clinton, and that means the presidency, and that means lots of money. So I would say this is a bid by Clinton to say, perhaps to somebody like Sheldon Adelson, right, some multi-billionaire obsessed with the status of Israel, a Zionist, if you like. Clinton is interested in having an argument. Sheldon, give us your money, give Hillary your money. We can produce better results than some reactionary, right? Somebody like Newt Gingrich or McCain or Romney or anybody like this, right? Go with Hillary. She's the best warmonger of the lot. So that carried a certain amount of clout in the administration, where some of the people are former Clinton loyalists and or current Clinton, former and future Clinton loyalists. A dirty blow. So Clinton's a warmonger. Surprise. McCain went to Syria. Remember, he crossed the border from Turkey illegally and cavorted with top terrorists. One of them had been involved in the kidnapping of Shiite pilgrims, right? People there to visit the shrines. No, said these death squad characters, you're Iranian spies. So one of McCain's hosts, one of the people that he was cavorting with, is a certified terrorist. So McCain, giving material support to terrorism, as was widely noted, goes and meets these people, comes back, tells how great they are. Seconded, of course, by Lindsey Graham. These are the two amigos. And then there's that awful war crone, Kelly Ayotte of New Hampshire. These can be relied on to spread as much blood around, not wealth, but blood. And then you've got the neocons, right? Needless to say, those, again, most obsessed with the Israelis. Charles Krauthammer had a piece in the Washington Post last week, which is all about how the U.S. is diplomatically non-existent, impotent, marginal, irrelevant, impotent in the Middle East. He mocks the fact that the U.S. no longer has a large base nearby. He basically says, Obama, you blew it. You should have kept bases in Iraq for precisely a moment like this, so you could have new aggression based on old aggression. And he mocks the idea that you can put a few Patriot missiles and a few F-16s and 1,000 soldiers into Jordan and try to influence events from there. So Krauthammer, the Weekly Standard, you know the Standard people, but also the David Ignatius types and the Jim Hoagland types. In other words, the sort of center oligarchs, center-garchs, warmongers to be sure, close to the State Department, close to the CIA or parts of it. The Weekly Standard. And again, you know these people. And then, of course, the French government, right? Hollande and Fabius. Hollande and Fabius, the Vichy-Soix nostalgics. And their idea is that they will be the beneficiaries, right? Because they are the colonial power of Syria well into the mid-1940s. After the Second World War, they were still there, eventually forced out. So that's pretty much it. And of course, Netanyahu, we can assume, and his group and his generals and his spooks, they're all part of it. So if you're looking for somebody to attack, if you want to impeach somebody, it's not Obama. No, surprise. Open your eyes, dummies. It's Kerry. How about impeach John Forbes Kerry? Impeach the skull and bones Secretary of State. This makes sense. This is politically smart. This gets you somewhere. This identifies the most dangerous enemy, right? Like in World War II. What's it going to be? Japan first or Germany first? It's clearly got to be Germany first. Doesn't mean you like Japan. It just means Germany first. Obama, I'll give you a lot, as I have already with 2 books, trying to keep him out of the White House and pointing out that he does. It's all based on drones, assassination, cyber warfare, economic warfare, but buck passing. He wants France to attack Libya. He wants Turkey to attack Syria, not the U.S., whereas the French and the British want the U.S. to do the dirty work, and then they get the benefits. So it's a very, very cynical war coalition, as they always are. Now, this also points us to an interesting thing. The realignment in the post-Qusair period, just to handle this before we come back to the U.S. domestic. Turkey, we're told that the Turkish government of Erdogan is now competing with Obama when it comes to leading from behind. They don't want to be out in front. Erdogan has been scared by these street demonstrations, right? It's not so much around the park. The park is for the golden youth and the computer-savvy rich kids of the capital. But the people that really got this going were in southern Turkey, and their main beef was, we don't want these death squad guys here. Get al-Nusra out. Get these killers out of here. Send them back to Chechnya, to Libya, wherever they come from. Erdogan does not want to inflame this anymore. And he knows if he attacks Syria, if anything big happens along those lines, he'll have the Turkish Alawites up in arms. He'll have the Turkish Christians up in arms. He'll have all kinds of people. The Kurds will take advantage to assert more independence and autonomy than they already have. Then you look at Jordan. The king of Jordan is scared out of his wits, right? He says, Obama, please leave these troops here. Leave me some missiles. Leave me some planes. Hamas splits into two parts. It's amazing. Haniyeh is a traitor. Haniyeh is a stab-in-the-back artist. He came to Tehran at the beginning of 2012 and hugged Ahmadinejad. He knew very well what the Iranian foreign policy was, that Iran wanted Syria to remain under Assad. Haniyeh then goes back to wherever he hangs out in Gaza, I suppose, and says, all right, fine, we're supporting the death squads because basically he wants money from Qatar and the Saudis and so forth. And having mentioned Qatar, this is the other interesting thing. Today, the emir has quit, the old king, the old emir, and now we've got a new generation of Thanis coming in. And what is this? The idea being that the old emir had gone way down the path of adventurism and lunacy and meddling and spending money and arming death squads. And now, with the fall of Qusair, it didn't work. That's what they're all responding to. Erdogan and Jordan and Hamas, the Hamas people, the pro-Syria people say, look, we need military aid from Iran. It doesn't help us to get involved and to please Qatar, no matter how much money you can get. We need the military cooperation with Hezbollah and Iran. So that's powerful stuff. In the case of the emir of Kuwait, the old emir, again, he had gone way out on a limb, and now the young guy seems to be, he wants to be more prudent. At the moment, is right after the fall of Qusair, and I can't think this is a coincidence. It means that there are lots of internal situations that are registering the fact that the death squads are not going to win, because the promise to Erdogan and the promise to Hamas was, come on the bandwagon, Assad will be gone in weeks, and then you can cash in on the victory. And so it was not destined, right? So it was not written, as we say in the Middle East. So up to us now is how to stop the Syrian war, not how to help Ed Snowden and the snow job. So forget the snow job, concentrate on the war. We'll be back in a minute on the Webster Tarpley program, Unbound Radio. Welcome to our concluding segment, I believe, here on the Webster Tarpley program, Unbound Radio. Once again, it's the 25th of June, Tuesday. We got people that are so concerned about Ed Snowden. Is he in danger? Let's just point out what you see now, the merger of Assange and Snowden. This, I think, means a lot. You remember that the sponsor, the godfather of Assange, was none other than Cass Sunstein. Cass Sunstein wrote an article in the Washington Post, February 2007, celebrating among other things, celebrating the arrival of brave new Wiki World, and in particular WikiLeaks, and he touted that as an organization that was going to start attacking China based on the great cyber wall of China and similar things. This is the same Cass Sunstein who then said it's time for the cognitive infiltration of the protest movements and the anti-establishment movements, 9/11 Truth, I'm sure anti-war and others, says this totalitarian thinker. And he wanted to do the cognitive infiltration to break them up, right, to disrupt them. And it largely succeeded. But it's not widely understood that the cognitive infiltration that Sunstein was talking about is Assange. It's WikiLeaks. It's what he wrote about in the Washington Post back in the early part of 2007. So when you see Snowden, this is another step in the cognitive infiltration designed to get people to follow false ops, in other words, to become the useful idiots and dupes of psyops. It is a limited hangout, typical of the CIA, and you can go and look on Tarpley.net. I've got a sort of a cognitive, an epistemological article. Conceptually, how can you tell, right? It used to be we were concerned with, and still are, of course, false flags, moles, patsies, technicians, drills. Now you've got to worry about the protagonist of a limited hangout, the Ellsberg, the Assange, the Snowden. What do they have in common? And how can you tell this one, where might it go? And comparisons. Now, Assange is sitting pretty. Nobody's ever laid a glove on him. He's been in jail, I think, for a week the entire time. But then he's been living in a British country house, and then he's been having a wonderful time at the Ecuadorian embassy. I don't see this as torture. Manning, of course, is torture. That's for sure. And that's, I think, partially to cover up, right, to detract attention from the fact that Assange is getting such a royal treatment. And now Snowden, well, we'll see what happens to him. But contrast that to Michael Hastings. Now, Michael Hastings, of course, is the guy who wrote the articles exposing the McChrystal-Petraeus clique. And I say that because he sampled the anti-Obama, anti-politician animus, in other words, fascist animus, coming out of these military circles. He took down McChrystal's career. He obviously created problems for Petraeus, and his last activity was to work with Jill Kelly down there in Tampa. You remember her. She was involved with General Allen and with Petraeus and with others. And now Hastings is dead. Go back to Hatfield, right? The author of that book, Fortunate Son, I think it was. George W. Bush was guilty of narcotics offenses and had to do community service. Hatfield found dead in a motel. And then don't forget Gary Webb, San Jose Mercury News, how the CIA brought cocaine into the country during Iran-Contra and then marketed it as crack cocaine. It's the picture that I give you in George H.W. Bush, the unauthorized biography. It's the same process seen from the bottom up. So contrast the celebrity, glamorous whistleblowers, Assange and Snowden, to somebody who has really done damage to the establishment. Hastings, I think Hatfield too, and certainly Webb. And their common denominator is they all get killed. So I think this puts it in a somewhat different perspective. And now, again, Naomi Wolf. We got Naomi Wolf, who is continuing. She's got a second article. Go and look at the second article. You'll see that my work is amply discussed. Naomi Wolf talks about how she doesn't believe Snowden is who he says he is, and she's absolutely right. And more power to her. And I don't care whatever else she writes or whatever else she does. That gives her a merit that puts her head and shoulders above the common run of these left liberals. And you got Salon magazine counterattacking Naomi Wolf and me, yours truly, for not believing in Snowden. We've also got little people coming on Russia Today and doing kind of veiled attacks on people that sound very much like the thesis that I represent, that if you don't believe in Snowden, you probably are from the CIA. Well, the only government agent of CIA and NSA that I can see in this is Snowden himself. So riddle me that, little friends. So we'll be back in 7 days, God willing, on the Webster Tarpley program, Unbound Radio. See you then, and mark the Gettysburg and Vicksburg anniversaries coming up next week.